Okay. Hello, history class, African American history. Since 1865, I am your professor, Dr. Sylvia Hollis. I first wanted to say I'm sorry that you're getting this video today and not on Monday or on Tuesday. I had technical difficulties with my laptop. I hope that you have since, I think it was Monday. Yeah, it was Monday. I hope you've since noticed the uploaded content, the syllabus, the first week's assignments. I'm sending you this video in case you haven't. And in case you received it and you're thinking, well, okay, well, what do I do with this? How do I begin? How do I, start this class? So this is going to be a general overview film on the class itself, what's expected of you, how I organized it, and I'm hoping to create as inclusive and welcoming and clarifying of a space as possible, even though we're going to be interacting in terms of a DL experience, so distance learning experience. So I look forward to reading what you write. I look forward to hearing your thoughts about the class. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to teach African American history, particularly the second half, during a period that's during a time period that's where this topic is just so relevant. And so I appreciate you taking this journey with me, and I hope that you look forward to these weekly engagements and videos that I'll send you. So with this being said, let's start with how do you navigate your way through the Blackboard site. So I'm going to share my screen. Here you see kind of traditional student mode for the Blackboard site. If you're curious where to go for an overview of the course, click here for the syllabus. And we'll open up the syllabus and just give you a general overview. Let's blow it up so you can see, so you can follow with me. All right, so obviously this is an African American history class. And the dates that the class will run are from March 29th to May 16th. This is a 7-week course, right? This is an accelerated 7-week course. This is the second time that we've done this as a college. The beginning of this kind of a mass 7-week course started at the beginning of this spring semester, so you're in the second half of that. If you haven't taken a 7-week course and you're curious what that means, it means that this is still the kind of traditional content that you would cover in a 15-week course, but it's accelerated. And so we will do the breadth of African American history since 1865. And as such, you may feel like there's a decent amount of readings and or assignments, but I've tried to not adjust what I teach and not adjust what you read, but I have tried to adjust how you communicate and convey what you've done, such that these projects and assignments within the syllabus are truncated, shortened, briefer assignments. Not because I think that the topic doesn't deserve or kind of robust, expansive methods of essays, but I really want to be able to succinctly understand your understanding of the readings and your understandings of what's expected. And so I don't want you to think that some of these assignments, although I ask you to keep your writing brief within 500 words or less, I don't want you to think that that means that it has to be less rigorous. I want you to think deeply, I want you to read deeply, and I want you to condense your work in separate notes and then give me the gems that you get from the readings. All right, so course overview. One of this African American history class is one of the 2 related courses associated also with the history of 235, which is African American history until 1865. So that's the earlier class, which may be taken in either order. It's a survey history of African Americans from the beginning of Africa and to the present. That's what the earlier class, that's the history 235 class is. But this is the second half. So what we're looking at is we're going to include topics including debates between Du Bois and Washington, Booker T. Washington, African American contributions to world wars, the Harlem Renaissance, the struggle for equality, strategies and continued economic, political, and social progress. The course does not substitute for 235, and so looking at course outcomes, right? Upon the completion of this course, you will be able to identify methods of social control that replaced slavery in the southern states, compare and contrast the various strategies of racial advancement in the late 19th and early 20th century, analyze the causes and effects of the 20th century African American migration, describe the effects of the Great Depression, World War II, and the Cold War on African American life during life and culture, obviously also World War I. Assess African American activism in the mid 20th century. Demonstrate, understand the political, cultural, social, and economic changes in the late 19th century. Understand the diversity of Blackness as a space for African American cultural identities, meaning Black people aren't a monolith. Like, if understanding this class doesn't mean that you understand all Black people, and understanding that through the readings you will understand a kind of more expansive way to ask questions internally about your understanding of African American history, and to practice that externally, through readings and all these other kind of ways that we consume intellectual processes. And I'm really passionate about this last one. It's one that I've integrated into the course as my own kind of a way to think through African American history. You will be able to use race, gender, class, and sexuality as categories of analysis, explaining their distinctive significance in the history of African Americans since 1865. So that kind of helps us get to how we are not looking at Blackness as a monolith. We understand that Black folk, and you'll hear me say Black folk often as a colloquialism, we understand that Black folk or Black people look at and are engaged with ideas about race, gender, class, sexuality in different ways, particularly given where the historical roots are and their ethnic roots are within the U.S. and beyond the U.S. Understanding that also an integral part of understanding African American history is understanding like the African diaspora and the fact that we have people that identify as Black coming from all over the world within within America. So that's also a really important intellectual frame for the way that we'll engage in this course. You see that the course reading is a textbook primarily by Robin D.G. Kelley, the brilliant, preeminent scholar, and he's the editor along with Earl Lewis. And the book we're looking at is To Make Our World Anew. And so that's a textbook. I hope you've already purchased it. Also, I noticed that the library has some digital downloads that are available, but I do believe from checking in with them that there's a limited amount of downloads. And so that's the reason why I signed the book itself, because I didn't want anyone to get stuck out there thinking that they could have digital copies access, and then the licenses ran out or what have you. Resources. Here are some additional resources on how to cite the materials around for the class. If you need tutoring assistance, I provided links to virtual tutoring. And this is just a general overview of what the weeks are going to look like, week by week by week. The first week, we are looking at the topic of studying African American history. Before we even go into the Civil War, we're not starting with the Civil War Reconstruction. I want us to really think. This is your week to process what's it like to study African American history. Where did it come from? Why does it matter? What kind of questions have African American history scholars asked? What is this class that I've just enrolled in? And so that's what this week is. It's a week of acclimation, okay? So you'll read the article by Dr. Allison Dorsey, Black History is American History, Teaching African American History in the 21st Century. You'll notice the article was published in March of 2007, which obviously a lot has happened since March of 2007. But I'm sharing that because I want you to have that in mind when you read it. I do find that this article is still relevant as a way to understand how academics develop classes in African American history. What kind of work went into Dr. Dorsey's development of her own African American history course. And I hope you also see that as a question of what kind of work went into this development that Dr. Hollis put into her African American history class. And so I welcome your feedback over the course of these weeks as you're doing certain readings. If there's things that stand out, if there's things that you're confused about, if there's any kind of way that the way that I structured this syllabus could be more that could further help you understand African American history in a better way, reach out to me, let me know. I would love to know that. In terms of additional assignments, so within the syllabus, you'll see what to do each week. You'll see it over here on the right side of the syllabus. And so we have, I want you to post your Prezi response, We'll get into that on the Blackboard site, exactly what that means. Watch the introductory video. This is the introductory video of the course. And so you're doing that. Good job. And I have a quiz that I've developed, just 15 questions on the class itself. Like, the quiz isn't on the content of the article by Dorsey. I will assess your feedback on the Dorsey article in the Prezi. But what I would love for you to do is take a quiz that lets me know, that helps me understand how clear you are on what's expected of you from this course. So 15 questions. If you read the syllabus, if you visit Blackboard, if you watch this video, you should be fine on passing the quiz. I also allow you to take the quiz multiple times, the first quiz, not all the other quizzes multiple times, but this one I'll let you take multiple times. Why? Because when you take the quiz, it will tell you if your answers are right or incorrect, right or wrong. And I want you, more so than to just be assessed on if you got it right the first time, I want you to learn what's expected of you in this class. And so that's why I have you allowed to take it multiple times. The work is due this coming Monday by 5 p.m. And so the work, meaning the Prezi, post your response, and also that quiz this Monday by 5 p.m. And that's the flow for the subsequent part of the classes. The only thing that I will add is weekly, for the rest of the weeks, I would love for you to do your Prezi response, which is going to be a response to a question that I provide to you, a film response, because every week I'll show you a film, your primary source lab, because every week you'll have a few documents to read to help you understand the time period in a more in-depth way. What's a primary source? A primary source is something from the time period from which we're studying. And it gives us an ability to understand the time period from which we're studying in a more clarifying way. So textbooks, like I'll give you an example. This is the textbook from the class. This isn't a document from the time period. This is a document that summarizes scholarship that other scholars have done about these time periods that we're studying. A primary source, for example, if you're studying something about the Civil War, it's a letter written by someone living in 1863. It could be a photograph of someone in 1863. It could be a song that was written during the Civil War. It could be an artifact. It could be a weapon from the war. It could be a dress worn from the war. Journal entries. So those are primary sources. And so we will do deep dives with materials from the time period from which we're studying, because I think that's the best way that we can understand use our own intellectual analytical thinking skills to understand the time periods. So textbooks will summarize. The primary sources you will analyze. Okay, you will read these sources and look at these materials and analyze and develop your own critical thinking skills based off these materials. And so and then you'll have a weekly quiz. Brief quiz. The first quiz that you have for the week is multiple choice. All the rest of the quizzes are true, false. Again, the goal isn't to trap you, it's to make sure that you understand the material. So we'll do that for 7 weeks. And at the bottom, you see the metrics of grading, understanding of a course. A grade is superior work. It's thoughtfully done. It doesn't have errors in it. It's relevant to it answers the questions I asked you to answer, but it also has an ability to help me see why I asked you the questions were important. Like, it frames this question matters because. That's what an A grade is. It doesn't just say yes, no, maybe as a response. It doesn't say yeah. It doesn't say I don't know. So, an A grade is thoughtful. A B grade is, I saw you were trying and you answer most of the questions, and yet the prose is a little bit confusing in sections. You missed some really high points that would have been obvious connections, but you had an ability to let me know that you understood the topic, but your response was a little weak. C grade is something comparably to a B, but there is a big difference. B grade also may have a ton, like not a ton, may have a couple grammatical errors. C grade, a lot of grammatical errors. I see where you're going, but if you had just taken the time to rewrite or read what you wrote out loud, you probably would have gotten a B. D grade, you answer the stuff. I am a little confused how you got to where you got. And F, you didn't submit the work. I believe that in a time when pandemonium, right? We're in a pandemic. Right now, in COVID, help me to help you. If you submit the work, you're going to get at least a D. I don't believe in getting Fs to people that are submitting work in the middle of pandemonium. But I hope that you enroll in this class to get better than a D. So if you want A work, submit A work. If you want B work, submit B work. If you want C work, submit C work, so on and so forth. So that's how I do grades. So what's it consist of? So you have these weekly précis, 500 words max. They're due every Monday. Answer the prompt on Blackboard that I submit, and then turn it in by 5. Quizzes, you do your quiz by Monday. That's 25% of your grade. Also, all of these components are 25% of your grade. Weekly film critique. You do not have a film critique for the first week because I'm giving you time to get adjusted to the flow of the class, right? So you have a film critique, which is no more than 500 words as well. You're going to post your response to the question that I submit on Blackboard by the following Monday at 5. Primary source lab. You will post your response to the questions, read the primary source document that I upload by the Monday at 5. So that's what it looks like. I will submit the folder will be open Monday for the next set of work. So April 5th, Monday, that's when I'll open up the next one for the following Monday. And that's how we'll go into the class, the flow, until this is over, until the semester is over. I had a statement on the principles of teaching in a time of the pandemic. A lot of us look forward to returning to in-person teaching that forms the foundation of our shared intellectual life. When it's safe to do so, that's when we want to do it, right? So during this extraordinary time of crisis, we come together as a community of scholars, teachers, archivists, students, administrators, to affirm the following principles, which shall guide our response into actions going forward. I want you to take care of your health and your family members' health first and foremost. I want you to understand that teaching flexibility at periods of time might be something that I require because of the work of working in a pandemonium. An example of this is me uploading this video on Wednesday because what happened? My laptop broke, and now I have a brand new laptop and I had to get my things together. All the things are more complicated in this kind of work from home environment. It's not the same thing as being able to take your computer to IT on campus and tinker around really quickly. With that being said, I won't use this as an opportunity to be lazy or shortcut any of the work that I'm giving you as like my presentations of the classes. I take this very seriously, and I hope that you will as well. But I'm committed to keeping this frame of like flexibility open. If at any point you have a lot of things going on that require a little bit of flexibility, and I mean serious, like you have looked within yourself, and there's too much going on for any week, reach out to me. Let me know. I need to know what's going on with you so I can help you show up as your best self on the student side. Technology, while technological innovation in the classroom is important, we're reluctant to burden instructors and students with new, cumbersome, costly tools. So I'm doing my best to give you use technology to tell you what's expected of you so that you can give me what's expected of you. And I need you to understand too that today more than ever, it's really important that you feel like this class has an open door policy, and it does. You may have noticed, if you've already looked at the syllabus, that I do not have formal office hours. That's because I really want to be more flexible. I don't want to have this kind of rigid, like, oh, you couldn't make it during this time period, so I'll see you next week if you can. I really want you, if you have a question, if you want to check in, if you're thinking about majoring in history, if you're thinking about not majoring in history, you're just trying to figure out what you want to major in, I want to have some open office hours. So feel free, if you need some time to check in, email me. Full transparency, there is a section on the quiz where where I asked the question, if you have a question about the class, what should I do first? I'll give you an answer if you're watching this. This is one answer. The first thing I want you to do is look over the syllabus and look over Blackboard. And then the second thing I want you to do is email me. Now, if you don't have a question, but you just need to check in, email me. So I don't want it to sound as if I don't want to hear from you. It's just, if you have a question and it's possible that the answer to the question is already on Blackboard and or in the syllabus, I want you to check that first. Why? Because I want you to have the tools that you need to do your job. And I don't want you to have any kind of delay around doing your job. Now, if it's not here, email me. If it has nothing to do with this class and you're just trying to understand, like, hey, professor, how'd you become a PhD in history? Email me, that kind of stuff. So I hope that's clarifying. All right, so next, we are going to course content. This is where you will go to understand what's expected of you weekly. I have frozen the subsequent weeks. I will eventually open up the rest of those weeks so you can see them, but I froze them now because I really want you to focus on the week that we're in. We are in week 1. Focus on week 1. All right, so we have week 1. You're going to read the Dorsey article. This is where you go every week to understand what you're doing. You're going to go to course content. This says, week 1. Read the Dorsey article. We're going to answer the following question. The article by Allison Dorsey will introduce how many historians have thought about their work well over a decade ago. Dorsey relays an interesting story about a group of women that she overheard calling African American history, quote unquote, hidden. Do you agree or disagree with these women? Why? Also, why was it important for you to enroll in this course in African American history? Share at least one question that you have after reading the article. That's your Prezi. No more than 500 words. Write that response. After you post your response, I want you to post your response. I want you to watch the introductory video, which you're doing right now, right? And I want you to take the syllabus quiz. All of that work should be done by 5 p.m. on Monday, April the 5th. Where's the rest of the work, you may ask? If you click on week 1, here's the Dorsey article. Where do you upload your Prezi? Prezi, you upload it here. 1. And so that includes the question. I'll click through it. You see the max amount of points you could get is 3.57. If you add all these up, by the end of the week, by the end of the semester, you'll be at like 25 points. That's how my point system is. You're expected to submit all the work. Work that you don't submit is a 0. It won't show as a 0 in the grade book because I really want you to do the work. But if you don't do the work, it will become a 0, which means that 0 will be averaged into the work that you did. And so all of the work that you do weekly will add up to 25 points. So those 4 sections: Prezi, film, primary source, lab, and something else. Prezi, film, primary source, lab, and sorry, I can't remember the fourth thing, but those four things add up to those four things add up to the 100 points, and that's how this works. So it's multiple point. And so cool. So here we have the Prezi, and then here we have your quiz, which I am right here making available. So now it's open if you all wanted to dive in. I didn't want to make it open until I uploaded the video because I didn't want you taking a quiz before you had material to take to assess it on. That would have been a trap. I'm not into that. All right, so what I want to show you next is this is an introductory film by the author. So what I'm about to show you next, just to clarify, this is this past summer, Dr. Allison Dorsey, the person whose article that you're about to read, she uploaded a film for students at Swarthmore College, where she teaches. This will make a little bit more sense once you read her article. But she teaches several African American history survey courses, and she wrote and shared a response about her experiences from this summer, and how as a way forward for her students. And I thought this would be important to include in our introductory video, in part because African American history is really not just about the past. It is as much about the present as it is about the past. And so I wanted you to watch this film as a way to frame our understanding of what's at stake, what matters about this class, why have I tried to set up the syllabus in the way that I have. And it is it's about education, but it's also about informing people about the history of Black citizenship, Black access to equality. What is the intellectual arguments that created and undergirded the idea of Black Lives Matter? Where did that come from before St. Louis? So this is Dr. Dorsey speaking explicitly to this past summer.
Hello, I'm Dr. Allison Dorsey, Professor of History at Swarthmore College. Like many of you, I have spent the past 4 months in quarantine, absorbed by the national news, reading articles from multiple newspapers, following scholars on Twitter, and listening to endless podcasts, all in the hopes I will read, see, or hear something that helps me make sense of the current healthscape. The anemic and tardy federal response to the COVID-19 crisis has resulted in the catastrophic loss of life, disproportionately the lives of elders and Black and brown working class Americans. The stalking and violent slaying of Ahmaud Arbery compounded this grief. A nighttime, no-knock police raid on the wrong address resulted in the brutal killing of Breonna Taylor. The televised murder of George Floyd, his life extinguished by the cavalier and cruel violence of a Minneapolis policeman, ratcheted up feelings of despair and anxiety for many in the nation. The tsunami of protest by activists the world over lifts up the long-standing Black calls for justice. William Faulkner's observation, "The past is never dead, it is not even past," resonates in this moment. As someone who studies the Black experience in America with an emphasis on the promise and heartbreak of Reconstruction, I cannot shake the sense that the nation has been here before, too many times before. I taught History 7B in 2019, which coincided with the 100th anniversary of the Chicago riot. I took advantage of the special collection of primary source documents compiled by the NEH and the Newberry Library. One of the most important documents in the collection is The Negro in Chicago, a study of the race relations and a race riot by the Chicago Commission on Race Relations, published in 1922. The commission, appointed by the Illinois governor, was to study the psychological, social, and economic causes which led to the explosion of violence in 1919. Over the course of the term, students learned that neither the commission nor the report was unique. Commissions and reports occurred after each major period of riot and rebellion in America in the 20th and now 21st century. The 1922 report revealed consistent patterns associated with urban uprisings. Police brutality and abuse against Black and brown citizens frequently sparked urban uprisings. Urban dwellers struggling with poverty, low wages, high rents, and racial segregation, reinforced by targeted white violence, arsons and bombings in Chicago, before the uprising. Urban unrest led to the destruction of property and businesses of members of the Black middle class, sometimes by Black residents, but frequently by white rioters and looters, such as the all-white athletic clubs in Chicago, who were not infrequently aided and abetted by white law enforcement. Solutions put forward by Black sociologists in 1922 focused on the need to address racism and racist behaviors toward Blacks. They proposed equitable housing, fair employment practices, and increased wages, better schooling, and ending police brutality. These suggestions from the 1922 report, the 1968 Kerner Commission report 46 years later, and the 2015 Ferguson Commission report 47 years after that, advocated radical policy changes to disrupt racism in America. Time after time, these suggestions were set aside in favor of lectures, screeds from white politicians and social critics admonishing the Black community. White leaders stressed the need to address Negro degeneracy, dysfunctional Black families, and to end Black on Black crime. White leadership, law enforcement, and American society writ large determined Black people were the problem, not systemic white racism. We will come out on the other side of the current moment, presuming we survive incompetence and corruption, greed and collusion, COVID-19, and the shredding of constitutional and judicial norms. We may again experience peace. But the brick wall of white supremacy and racism will remain. There will soon be more proposals for a commission, a dialogue on race and diversity. As a historian and a citizen, I am preparing myself for the possibility the nation might miss another opportunity to confront and dismantle racism. There are plenty of experts with viable policy proposals for ending racism. Philip Atiba Goff, Sherilyn Ifill, Ibram Kendi, Susan Rice, Robert Reich, and Elizabeth Warren, to name just a few. Dismantling racism is hard work, and I fear the nation might do what it has done in the past: deflect, ignore, and sweep aside legitimate demands for justice and equity, and simply wait for the next conflagration. On grim days, such as when the number of Americans lost to COVID-19 hit the 110,000 mark, or when American citizens peacefully protesting in front of the People's House were met with tear gas and American servicemen in riot gear, I am tempted to say, let it all burn. Burn down the storied city on a hill, because I am tired of the cognitive dissonance between the imagined and the real. So tired, I can feel the aching knees and sore back of every underpaid, overworked, exploited Black woman who has been designated an essential worker. On better days, the teacher in me who believes in the promise of the future holds sway. That part of me engaged in 2 nights of hours-long conversations with our son, the filmmaker, begging him not to go out to record the mayhem in Los Angeles, trying to tamp down his legitimate outrage that the President of the United States publicly toyed with the idea of having American soldiers armed with bayonets confront citizens exercising their First Amendment rights on American soil. It is my job as his first teacher, and as he put it, the historian I have on speed dial, to talk about the other times the nation moved toward the brink, about what has worked in the past and the promise embodied in a new electorate with better ideas and bolder plans for change. It is my job to encourage him to give the system another chance to do the right thing. But will the system get it right? Are the vast majority of white Americans in government, law enforcement, corporations, and churches, at universities and colleges, including Swarthmore College, willing to do the work necessary to upend white supremacy and racism? Are those neighbors and colleagues, some of whom marched in pink hats, prepared to do the heavy lifting of working for school integration, against economic exploitation and police violence in our county, in our state, in our nation? Will they stop second-guessing their human peers who live in Black bodies when we say we cannot breathe? There are some signs that the moment is ripe for real change. Americans of all ethnic and racial groups, all genders, generations, religions, and class backgrounds are right now demanding change and calling out racism. There are reasons to be hopeful, but we must remain vigilant, mindful that change does not happen, will not happen without focus, sustained pressure, and changes in policy. Transformation requires cultural change in America. Griot and Guiding Light Toni Morrison centered her work on the lives, art, pain, and joy of Black people. She urged us to know our worth and to love ourselves irrespective of white supremacy and racism. As she noted in an interview, if you can only be tall because somebody is on their knees, then you have a serious problem. My feeling, she continued, is that white people have a very, very serious problem, and they should start thinking about what they can do about it. I could not agree more. As we know from American history, the failure to address systemic racism maims civil society in every era, endangers American democracy, and it kills Black people. Rest in peace, George Floyd.